Well, good afternoon, everyone. Meteorologist Michael Wilhite here, WilhiteWX.com. Welcome to the latest edition of the Long Ranger. Much to talk about here tonight. So let's go ahead and dive right into what's going on. First off, we have just a very wet pattern that has shaped up, and it looks like it's going to continue to shape up for the lower Ohio Valley here. Just a good amount of rain coming to us this week as we just sort of look at the GFS model here. You can get an idea. Here we start off early tomorrow morning, and you see there's rain for Monday and Tuesday, and here's Wednesday, and now we're into Thursday. There's rain. Here's Friday, and here's Saturday. Here's Sunday. I mean, you see it just doesn't let up most of the week here. It's just wave after wave after wave of rain, and after this week, we get maybe a brief reprieve, but look at this. There's more rain as we open up the month of March there in store for us, potentially. So there's an active weather pattern shaping up, plenty of it coming. The Euro is suggesting the same thing. Let me use the Euro. I think it zoomed in here on our region, and it gives it a little bit better of an idea here of what you can expect for Monday. Expect some scattered showers out there as you go early on into the day. But you know, for some of you, especially down here in Kentucky and southern Indiana, really going to dry out on Monday afternoon with smaller chances, but never fear, the rain will come. Tuesday, we'll have some small rain chances there as well, but Wednesday, the bigger rains start to come back in. And then Thursday, we've got decent rain chances. Could be some heavy rain there on Thursday before we dry out just briefly. And Friday brings us more potentially heavy rains, and you see the core of that coming right over southern Indiana here, the way the Euro suggests. And then Saturday, we get yet another rain, a wave of rain that moves through, and another big wave possibly on Sunday that moves through. The Euro is very active, and here we are on Monday, still raining. And yeah, you got to go out until Tuesday of next week before you see it just completely dry in our area. So we have multiple days worth of rain coming here. And how much rain could we be talking about? Well, look at the Euro model here, what it suggests all the way from tomorrow morning all the way out until next week. It's suggestive of multiple inches of rain. I mean, just check this out. We're talking there's 6.5 in Louisville. Just about 7 inches there right around Henderson, almost 6 inches up there in Bedford, 4 up around Indy, 6.5 down there around Bowling Green, almost 8 inches as you get down towards Paducah. It's just, any way you cut it, it's just a heavy swath of rain, especially in sort of this area in here. But the whole region, it gets multiple inches. And honestly, if this is the Euro, if we look at the GFS, it's not far behind it. Again, there's, not worried so much about specific totals here, but again, they're very similar, 6.8, 4.3, 5.0, and again, you notice what it is that swath of heavy rain sort of right up in the same region as what the Euro had it there. So, I would say over the next week, the data is pointing that we could get 3 to 6 inches of rain fall over the area, and of course, a lot of our rivers are already swollen, so we just flat out don't need that right now. But unfortunately, it looks like it's going to come multiple inches of rain for multiple days. The good news is there will be some warmth with it. Now, we saw a little bit of snow on Saturday around here. If you had followed my forecasts on Twitter and Facebook, I did mention in some of my forecasts that snow mixing in with the rain or turning over to snow was possible early on, and it would turn back to rain. That's exactly what it did. And some of you actually got a nice little slushy inch and a half accumulation out of it, but of course it melted very quickly as you went through the day. We warmed up into the 40s there on Saturday, so it didn't really cause much of an issue by the time you got to the afternoon hours. Now, I hope you enjoyed that, though, because is that the last snow that we could get here in the Ohio Valley, the lower Ohio Valley especially this year? I think there's a really good chance of that. Now, March is always a volatile month, and so we understand that, but looking ahead at the forecast, I'm not excited about any prospects for more snow. All right, let me talk about those temperatures, and you'll see exactly what I mean. So tomorrow, very warm day. It's warm out there right now into the 50s, but look at this. The Euro suggests some of us get up into the 70s tomorrow, again, around the area. A nice chunk of the area in the 70s, and even, 60, really 60 plus degrees all the way from here on southward. So most all of us in southern Indiana gets to at least the 60s. And a good chunk of Kentucky makes it to the 70s, and maybe part of southern Indiana even makes it into the 70s tomorrow with this as well. It's even warmer on Tuesday as we make it into the mid-70s across Kentucky, and a chunk of southern Indiana may make it into those lower 70s as well. But you can just see right here, there's the cold front plowing towards us, and that will plow through us on Wednesday. And during the afternoon, it'll get much colder there, but we rebound nicely after that. We'll have one day of temperatures on the pretty cool side, but then we rebound back up into the 50s, and the suggestions that we make some 60s and even 70s down here, cutting through the area on Friday. So some warm temperatures there are coming back, and then next week, there you're coming back where temperatures could be close to the 70s again. So yes, we'll have a day or two that will be on the cooler side in there, but warmth is by far the bigger story as we go throughout this. And it makes sense as you take a look at the modeling. As we take a look at some of our data, and I know, if you're not a big weather geek, you may not get this, but for those of you that do, we're looking at the East Pacific Oscillation. And remember, a negative EPO just indicates a very stormy time for us. And there it is. We're firmly in the negative for the next few days. There's that stormy time for us, but it does get better. It starts to rise again. But look, you've got a very much of an up and down pattern coming to you as you come through the month, the first half of March or so here. So that indicates to me that we've got some breaks in there, but we've got some active times coming with us as well. And if the EPO stays strongly negative for a long period of time, that usually is an indication that you will have some sort of blocking develop and that you can get some colder air come down in. And indeed, if you take a look at the Arctic Oscillation, this indicates cold air on the move from Canada. When it goes into the negative, cold air is wanting to try to funnel down into the United States, and you see it go firmly into the negative as we open up those first few days of March here. And we look at the North Atlantic Oscillation, which is indicating sort of a roadblock, if you will, into the North Atlantic whenever it goes negative, firmly in the negative here coming up as we open up March as well here. So there's indications of that. Now, all those look good for cold in the eastern United States, except one thing, the PNA. When the PNA, the Pacific North American pattern, when the PA is negative, that indicates a trough in the western United States rather than the eastern. And so the position of that trough firmly in the negative as we head out into here. So that will tell me that even though it may try to get cold because of all these under indices, if the PNA is not cooperating, it's not going to get really cold. That tells me you could get a cold shot or two sneak in between these fronts here and there, but it's not going to sustain itself very long. Therefore, I would suggest that the indices point more toward warmth than they do cool for me. Here's another way to look at that. We'll visualize it, and you can see exactly what I'm talking about. This is looking at the pattern in the mid-level of the atmosphere, 30,000 feet or so up. What we got going on is a big ridge of high pressure here in the southeast. The southeast ridge has finally decided to flare up. That is a very classic La Nina feature. We have not seen that classic La Nina feature pretty much all winter. It has finally decided to flare up. This is why La Nina winters are oftentimes warm, because of that. Notice what it is. You're very much of a negative PNA. You've got your trough out here in the west. And then you've got your ridge of high pressure in the southeast over here, and watch what that's doing. It's putting the flow sort of from the southwest right over us. And so because you've got this flow rotating clockwise around here, you've got a trough digging down up into here. What you've got is really just a moisture axis all right up in here. And so your storm track is right through the lower Ohio Valley. And because we're sort of in this almost a ring of fire pattern, it's, if it were the summertime, we'd call it a ring of fire, where it gets really hot and storms right over the top of the ridge. It's not really hot because it's wintertime, but it's kind of that same principle. You've got storms riding over the top of this ridge, and so we're right here in what we would call the baroclinic zone. You got extremely warm temperatures down here into the southeast, colder temperatures up into here, and right here into the lower Ohio Valley. Here we are in that baroclinic zone, and we've got that southwest flow. So what we have is we've got tropical moisture coming in and being forced all over to us, aka that sets up for a very rainy pattern. And as I put this into motion, just notice that southeast ridge stays in place. And here we are, even into the end of this week and into the beginning of next week, in our positioning. The southeast ridge is starting to position itself a little bit more, and there's the trough over here, but we're still on that kind of a flow, and we don't get out of that flow until we start to enter into the first part of next week. That's the first part of next week. We start to go to a more of a zonal look over here. And so that will shut off the moisture fetch for us. That'll shut off that active storm track. So it will get better. The rain will eventually shut off, but it looks like it's going to be next week before that happens. And so we've got a very, very rainy week ahead for us. By the way, this illustrates another thing for you too. If you were to take a look at this negative NAO and you look at it and say, wow, we ought to see major blocking up in Greenland, and that ought to buckle the jet stream and keep cold down here. Well, as you look at this, watch as I go through this, and you see it's not blocked up here in Greenland at all. Where's your negative NAO? It's right here. It's just off the map, but you can see these warmer colors. The block is actually an east-based block. And so the negative NAO this time is really off out in here. And so because it's off towards the east, that's going to affect Europe more than it will us. We've got more of a trough up in here, and so what you've got is it's allowing this southeast ridge to sort of pump up here. And watch what happens, though, as you go later on in time. This block does start to work itself towards Greenland just a little bit and retrograde to the west. What happens to the southeast ridge when that does? When that starts to retrograde off to the west, the southeast ridge gets forced out of the way down here, gets forced a little bit more to the south, and that's when things change and we start to go back zonal. So right now, this negative NAO not really having that much of an effect on us. If you're in social media land and you're on WX Twitter and you're sort of looking at things and saying, boy, all this talk about a negative NAO, and you know, typically it would bring a roadblock enough to give us some cold weather. But until at least later on in time, it's very much an east-based negative NAO. Not going to have much of any effect on us at all until possibly a little bit later on. And by the time you get out into here, that's a little bit uncertain. If we take a look at the long-range Euro, this is the 46-day EPS ensembles. We're looking at 2-meter temperature anomalies. And what this is suggesting is warmth, warmth, and more warmth even as we go through March. There are some data that's pointing to a little bit of a cooler March. It's sure in the Euro. The Euro is very warm for us overall. The core of the cold is sort of back up here into the Pacific Northwest and into the northern plain states. But overall, it's mostly warmth for us as we head into the eastern part of the United States. All right. And if we were to sort of take a look at some of the other things as well, the Euro weeklies, the latest of the runs of the Euro weeklies out through the next 4 weeks, very warm for us here as well. The CFS is a little bit different. It's very warm for these first couple of weeks, but as you get into the beginning parts of March, it does start to see that cold invading a little bit more down here and then moderating back a little bit, but it still has cooler risks for us as you go through March. So the American data, the CFS data, versus the European ensemble data, polar opposites of each other. For their part, the Climate Prediction Center has kept the core of the cold sort of right up here where the Euro does and went with good old equal chances for the rest of us. That's probably a reasonable bet at this point, given how much disagreement there is in the modeling. But at this point, I would not put much weight on the CFS. It's a very poor model that doesn't perform overly well usually. And so I don't ever give it a whole lot of weight, although I will say that the Euro Weeklies haven't been doing the greatest lately either. But I would lean more towards a slightly above normal to more normal kind of pattern for March as the way things are looking for me in the Ohio Valley right now at this point. I just don't see a bunch of real cold. As we take a look at temperatures here, on the this is for Evansville, Indiana. This is from the Euro. You can see here just extreme warmth as you get into the early part of this week. We're talking temperatures in the low 70s. Yeah, we get knocked back on Wednesday, but we go right back up again, and you're talking very warm temperatures with a very wet period of rain. This is suggesting by the time you finish out next Monday, we're looking at possibly 6.9 inches of rain possible for Evansville there, so an extreme amount of rain with that as well. If you kick it out to the EPS on the Euro ensembles here, again, there you see those really warm days and a little bit of a cooler day. But then again, as you even open up into March, you're still warm for this time of the year. It's an above normal pattern here. For its part, the GFS ensembles, the GEFS, the Global Ensemble Forecast System, again, you see those couple of days that are very warm for us here. That happens at midnight, and we start to fall down on Wednesday there. But again, you see some relative warmth here. It does suggest that as you begin to open up March, this would be the 4th and 5th over here, that you have some cooler risks in there. We'll have to see on that. But all the data very much over the next 2 weeks is pointing to a very warm period after this. And then beyond that, well, we're just going to have to end up seeing again. Do we believe the euro with more of a torchy look to it, or do you believe the CFS, which has a little bit of a colder look to it at this point? Probably why the Climate Prediction Center went with good old equal chances for us. And what can you really do whenever you see the data like that? I actually like the look of where the Climate Prediction Center has gone. I think that's a pretty reasonable bet at this point. The below, I do think all the model data is agreeing that the core of the cold stays up into here. Could that cold bleed a little bit further down into here? I think that's possible. But I think the idea of more of a warmth up in here may be possible too. So it's just really anyone's guess at this point, to be bluntly honest about March. March is always a very transitional month. And so expect a lot of up and downs as you go into March. We always get those. I think above all, when it's all averaged out, you may end up with more milder days like this than you have cooler days like that. It's not to say that we can't get some cooler days in there. We certainly can. We're getting it even this coming week, all right? So you look at the data and you go from big time highs to a cold day and then right back rebounding again. If I had to take a guess what March would be like, I think it's going to be more like this, where you have more warm days with an occasional cooler day scattered around in there. Snow, we can get some big snowstorms in March, but they don't last very long when we get them. We have had some big ones in the past, but they are kind of rare. And as you go further on in here, it's going to be very hard to get snow. I hope you enjoyed that snow on Saturday. Again, is that the last snow that we'll have this year? I'll end with this. My gut says yes, but the weather oftentimes does what it wants to do. So we'll see. I wouldn't hold my breath on any more snow this year. I certainly would look for more warmth than I would. If anything, Groundhog said 6 more weeks of winter. Doesn't look like 6 more weeks of winter to me. Looks like a nice early spring coming to the lower Ohio Valley. That's it for this update. More at willheightwx.com.